Alright, welcome back to another video. I know, crazy. I'm posting 2 days in a row. It's a myth come true, bro. I don't know what to tell you, man. I'm cooking. But this part is going to be way better, you know. The first part, that was just the prologue before everything gets hyped. Anyways, once again, a big thank you to Weeb for helping me figure out what direction I wanted to go with this. And let's just go straight into it. So after Naruto passes the exams, you know, he's put on a team with both Sakura and Sasuke as in canon. But this time around, Naruto is by far the strongest on the team. However, Naruto also has far more patience than he did in canon, so while waiting for the 37 years that he had to wait for Kakashi to pull up, he just waited. He has that patience because it was instilled to him by Jion. Anyways, when Kakashi enters the room, Naruto's just like, where were you? Why did we have to wait so long? But he does it in an extremely polite tone and everything. You know, he's being respectful to his sensei. And Kakashi is just like, I got lost on the path of life. And Naruto in his head is like, man, that's some BS, bro. And so then Kakashi is just like, alright, everybody up to the roof. Sasuke's goal is to repopulate his clan and all that. It remains relatively canonical. Until Naruto, whose goal is to replenish his clan. Though Kakashi is just like, oh, he wants to bring the Uzumaki back. But that's not actually the case. What Naruto wants to bring back is the fairies. He wants the return of the fairy race after they all perished when Kaguya had come to Earth. And so then Kakashi, you know, is asked by Sakura, what are your dreams like? Some blah, blah, blah. Kakashi's like, none of your business. Bro, I love that. That was so funny in the anime. I know this is an off tangent, but that shit was hilarious, bro. It was a whole ass womp womp situation, yeah. So then Kakashi's just like, don't eat anything tomorrow for breakfast. You will throw it up. And meet at the training grounds at 7 a.m. sharp. So Naruto actually decides to ask Sakura and Sasuke, yo, you guys want to go get something to eat before we head home? And Sakura at first is reluctant, and Sasuke is kind of down for it, but then Naruto is just like, it's important for us to learn how to bond with each other, because if we're going to be a team, we have to be able to work together. Because, as I said in part 1, that maturity has been instilled into Naruto. And so, they all go, you know, they go to Ichiraku Ramen, they eat up, and they're having a good conversation, and their bond has grown, even if it was slightly. The next morning, they all pull up at the training ground at 7 a.m. sharp, and then by like 9:30 a.m., Kakashi finally arrives. And Naruto already knows, I'm not going to ask, because I know I'm just going to get a dumb response like last time. So Naruto then looks at Sasuke and Sakura and is like, before this starts, we need to figure out some sort of plan, because I know there's going to be some sort of test, and I have a feeling we're about to have to fight him. I don't know what for, but none of us are going to beat him in a 1v1. It is not happening. So let us come up with the game plan before we actually need to. And so, Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke, they end up coming with a quick little game plan. And that's when Kakashi is like, are you guys done talking? And they're like, yes. And Kakashi explains about the bell test, this, and that. And that's when he ends up just saying, alright, 3, 2, 1, go. And the first thing that happens is Sasuke actually ends up attacking Kakashi first, while the other two run and hide. But when the plan was decided, they had not decided on Sasuke attacking. Sasuke purely went to attack Kakashi out of ego, because he doesn't like the fact that he is listening to Naruto. So he's like, screw this guy, I don't want to listen to him, I'm gonna go do things my way. Oh boy, was that a mistake, because he just starts to get pieced up by Kakashi with one hand, bro. Sasuke's ego and, like, anger is actually making him inefficient, so, like, he's way worse than he was in canon, where he was calm and collected. He's just, like, he's very predictable and angry, and he's messing up. So, Kakashi's having such an easy time fending him off. And that's when Naruto is just like, God damn it, Sasuke. And even Sakura is kind of like, what are you doing, Sasuke? But that's when Naruto's like, alright, well, I'm going to have to make the best of this and work around him. Sakura, you back me up. You try and get the bells while I team up with Sasuke and try to fight Kakashi. So Naruto goes and starts trying to join in the fight, and he's actually doing solid work. But that's when Sasuke actually attacks Naruto mid-fight, saying, "Don't get in my way, this is my battle." And like, Naruto's just like, what is your problem? Look, I don't think I'm better than you, but clearly you have some sort of insecurity because you want us to lose. What is your problem, Sasuke? And even like Kakashi kind of just stops for a second. It's like watching the situation unfold. But as Naruto's actually yelling at Sasuke, because as much as Naruto has matured, he still has emotions and he's still a kid, bro. So he's like yelling at Sasuke, and that's when you hear the alarm go off. So then Sasuke actually ends up tied to the post because Kakashi obviously realized that Sasuke was the issue. And so he ties Sasuke to the post, where Sakura actually decides that she's just going to feed him. So that way, once they go back for round 2, things will be a lot easier. And of course, as in canonical fashion, after she feeds him, Kakashi appears going, "You have passed!" And everybody's just kind of like, huh? And Kakashi then explains the real reason behind the bell test and all that, and they're actually kind of annoyed, but they get it. Like, if you're working in a 4-man team and stuff like that, you guys have to be able to work together, or lives may be lost. It makes sense in the end. They're going to be ninjas, not just regular civilians. And so, Kakashi ends up telling them they pass, but he actually does kind of look at Sasuke this time, and he's just like, "Sasuke, you refuse to work with your teammates, and you're going to have to get over that pride of yours. Because the only thing that held you back there was you." And honestly, that was the worst thing Kakashi could have said to Sasuke, because that just wounded Sasuke's pride so much. And so, for the next like 2 or 3 weeks, they're taking on E rank, D rank missions. And eventually, Naruto actually stops Hiruzen when they're finishing a mission, and it's just like, "Hey, I think we are ready for a more dangerous mission, like a C rank maybe, because I don't think we'll get any stronger or any more proper experience without doing said things, because obviously one thing that forms a ninja is experience." And Hiruzen is actually listening to Naruto's argument, and he's just like, "Alright, Kakashi, what do you think? Do you think they're ready?" And Kakashi is like, "I do believe that they are ready." And so Hiruzen's alright, so here's your mission, call in the bridge builder, and things remain relatively canonical, except in this timeline he kind of insults Sakura instead of Naruto, because Naruto is actually pretty tall. He's taller than Sasuke and Sakura, and he's actually a big guy too. So anyways, Tazuna kind of looks at him and is impressed. So the next morning, they end up meeting at the entrance of the village, and they're getting ready to leave. And Sasuke is just like, "So, why do you need like protection? Like, what's actually happening?" Because Sasuke is just questioning things for the whole reason of questioning things at this point. After his pride is wounded, he just can't stop questioning everything, and he's been doing it for like the last couple of weeks. And Tazuna is just like, "Some people don't want the bridge built, but there are only some like weaker ninjas. I just cannot fight." And so they continue walking on, and that's when they actually walk by a puddle, and Naruto is the first to actually notice it, which kind of shocks Kakashi. He's just like, he has surprising instincts. And Naruto's like, "Wait, there's something off about that puddle. It hasn't rained in days." And that's when, next thing you know, the demon brothers come out of the puddle, and they're coming for them. And that's when you see Naruto actually duck the chain and grab one of them by their face and slam them into the ground, while Kakashi does his thing, aka die, quote unquote, to the other one, and Sasuke pieces up the other one. So then, Naruto's like, "Alright, Kakashi, I know you're not dead if I was able to piece them up, and so was Sasuke." And Kakashi's like, "You caught me." And so Kakashi is like, "I just wanted to see how you guys would fare on your own. I'm gonna interrogate these two." And so the interrogation happens, and that's when Kakashi looks at Tazuna. He's just like, "This isn't just a regular escort mission. I thought you said these ninja were weak." no, there's more to this. And that's when Tazuna comes out with the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So help him God, you know? So Kakashi wants to turn back, but Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura actually end up convincing him to continue forward. That's when, a little while later, Naruto notices there's a white bunny. That doesn't make sense. It's summer. Why would there be a bunny? And then that's when Naruto senses it along with Kakashi, and they're both like, duck! So everybody ducks, and you just see the giant executioner's blade spin above their head into a tree. And then you see Zabuza and Momochi appear on top of the tree. And then Zabuza, looks down and is like, Kakashi of the Sharingan. And so, things remain relatively canonical. I'd like to say things remain canonical. But towards the end, where Kakashi's starting to lose for the first time, that's when Naruto actually uses something that Jion taught him. And that's when Naruto used an incomplete version of Hunter Fest. And what that is Bond's move where he zaps strength. So after he does that, Zabuza actually starts to move slower, and he's kind of thrown off guard by this. And that's when Kakashi actually ends up hitting Zabuza and knocking him out. That's when Haku intervenes and things remain canon. They leave, blah, blah, blah. They go to the village. Kakashi passes out, sleeps for a couple of days. Teaches everybody about tree walking. Sakura has the easiest time. Things remain relatively canonical until the bridge builder attack day. Naruto was still heated about the whole Inari thing, so he actually ends up training so much harder than he even did in canon. Because he's already stronger than he was, so it takes a lot more to actually tire him out. And he ends up sleeping in a lot. And that's when he wakes up to the sound of Inari and his mother getting attacked. He runs down the stairs and quickly, knocks out the two attackers. And that's when he realizes that everybody's gone to the bridge. So he quickly makes a clone, leaves it there, and instead of running, because, he's slightly more lazy in this timeline, he's just like, I'm still a little tired, I'm gonna take a little nap. He actually has his guardian there, and he hops on it and has it float him over there while he just closes his eyes and relaxes a little bit before he gets into a fight. Because he can already sense that something's going on over at the bridge. So he arrives, and he sees that Sasuke is doing relatively fine for the time being, so he goes to help Kakashi. And the battle is, still going fairly similar to canonical until Sasuke is about to get seriously injured by Senbon. That is when Sakura runs in and actually tanks the hit for Sasuke. And as she's falling, she sees the back of Naruto and sees that it has the Uzumaki symbol. And she's like, the Uzumaki. And she passes out. That's when Sasuke actually awakens his One-Tomoe Sharingan, but it's at the peak of a One-Tomoe. Because he's actually kind of crushing on Sakura at the time. And so Sasuke ends up beginning to be able to keep up with the Senbon relatively well. But that's when Naruto turns around and sees what has happened. And that's when his spear begins to awaken. Because currently all his spear has ever been is in Guardian mode. It's not able to do much other than take a couple hits. And he's been trying to not rely on it too much due to what Jion said to him at the tree. And so Naruto then ends up using his spear and turning it into spear chastiful form increase. And that's when you see 1,000 daggers just spinning around Naruto, and he just sends them straight at the crystal mirrors. And honestly, they're not doing that much, but the buildup of so many daggers just hitting the crystal mirrors ends up beginning to break them one by one by one by one. And then when Haku ends up leaving the mirrors to get away from it, that's when you see Sasuke end up hitting Haku with the fireball jutsu and pinning them to the ground. And that's when Haku turns his head and sees Zabuza about to get pierced by a Chidori. And like in canon, ends up escaping from Sasuke and taking that Chidori himself instead of Zabuza. And Zabuza pretends he doesn't care, but honestly, in this timeline, Naruto's a lot more polite with his words, but it still cuts Zabuza deeper than any knife ever could. His own words, if you want to quote the anime. And so Zabuza ends up taking on Gato and his men, dying in the process but killing all of them. And that's when they lay Zabuza and Haku to rest next to each other. They then end up finishing the build of the bridge and returning back to the village. And so we then cut to Sakura in the library after the whole, recount of the mission to Hiruzen. But we already knew that happened because that's canonical anyways. So after the whole recount, Sakura is in the library and she's just reading up on the Uzumaki. She's like, alright, the first Hokage's wife was an Uzumaki. It was also the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. And that's interesting. The Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. Is there a reason behind that, I wonder? And then she also reads that the main trait of the Uzumaki visually is the fact that they all have red hair. And so she begins to question, why doesn't Naruto have red hair? But she just ignores it for the time being and decides that she wants to go train. And the reason she's decided this, that she's going to train 10 times harder, is because her near-death experience on the bridge. And so she's practicing her taijutsu, her shuriken stuff. She's practicing everything so that she can keep up with Naruto and Sasuke. But she's realized something about Naruto. His power can be overwhelming at times due to this weapon that he carries. And so Sakura is also questioning a little bit about the weapon, but she just moves on from it for now and decides that training is more important and keeping up is as well. After this, that's when Hiruzen talks to Kakashi and mentions the Chunin exams, that he wonders if Kakashi thinks they're ready. And Kakashi honestly says, yeah, they did really well as a team at the Bridge Builder mission against a stronger opponent. And Hiruzen also asks Kakashi then, so how has Naruto been faring? And Kakashi's like, Naruto is actually really strong for a genin. He honestly, strength-wise, he's probably high Chunin and low Jonin, but something's holding him back. I just don't know what it is. And so Hiruzen takes what Kakashi said and just basically runs with it. And Kakashi ends up going to Team 7. It's just like, the Chunin exams are happening soon. Would you guys like to participate? I'll leave the choice up to you if you guys think that you are ready. And so they all say, yeah, I'm ready. Stuff like that. That's when Kakashi is like, all right, I'll let the Hokage know. So then the day of the Chunin exam arrives, and that's when they're going into the building, and that's when Rock Lee stops them. And this is something I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video, but Naruto was actually a Rookie of the Year in this timeline. He was smarter and stronger than Sasuke. And so Rock Lee is like, I want to fight you, Naruto Uzumaki! I don't know why I said Uzumaki like that, but yeah. And Naruto in this timeline is like, no, I don't think it's a good idea to fight right now. We're about to begin the Chunin exams. I need to preserve my energy, and truthfully, I think you should as well. And Rock Lee is like, you make a fair point! And so they end up going their separate ways for the time being. And that's when they're going up the stairs and they notice something's off. Naruto immediately realizes there's a lot of chakra going on around here. There's some sort of genjutsu in play. So that's when he takes Sakura and Sasuke, who also noticed something was off but couldn't quite put their finger on it, and takes them away from there into the proper room. And that's when they do the test. The test remains relatively canonical. Naruto doesn't need to cheat though because he's smart enough. And the final question, they all pass. And so now we're at the Forest of Death, and Anko just pulling up like, you guys ready? And Ibisu telling her to, screw off because she's interrupting something. Anyways, then we just transfer to Naruto and them being talked to by Anko and being told about how the Forest of Death part works. And it all makes sense. And there's no real questions. So then we go into the Forest of Death, and things remain fairly canonical. Naruto ends up needing to use the washroom, and he walks away. They have a passcode and everything. And so when Naruto, quote-unquote, returns, he says the passcode correctly and everything, and that's not what kind of shoots Sasuke off. Naruto isn't that quiet. Randomly appearing behind them was really suspicious, in his opinion. And so he turns around and he's just like, "Who are you?" And that's when the ninja is just like, "Oh, so you could tell I wasn't your teammate?" And that's when Sasuke is like, "Full honesty, you're far too weak to be him." And that actually kind of pisses off the ninja. And that's when he immediately attacks Sasuke, but Sasuke has no difficulty piecing up him and his team. And that's when we cut to Naruto, who's still taking a leak. And that's when a giant snake appears, trying to attack Naruto. But Naruto had finished his pee at that point. And Naruto ends up hopping on his spear guardian and flying above the snake, getting away from his first bite, and starting to go back towards his team. And that's when he notices there's a large amount of chakra heading towards his team. And it's a jutsu. It's a wind jutsu that's headed towards Sasuke and Sakura. And so he ends up arriving in the nick of time and uses his guardian to like block the blow somewhat, so they don't actually go flying, but they do get pushed back significantly. And that's when you see Sasuke start to panic because you notice Orochimaru's bloodlust. And Naruto, he flinches, but it's not super crazy for him because one of the things Jian taught Naruto is how to resist bloodlust. He would hit Naruto with a lot of bloodlust, and Naruto would have to get used to it. So Naruto still gets hit by it, and he flinches, but it doesn't stop him cold turkey. It doesn't. So Naruto is still trying to fight Orochimaru and protect the others. And that's when Sasuke ends up stabbing himself in the leg, and Sakura ends up actually doing the same. And so when Sasuke ends up freezing up again in a second when the snake attacks him, and you see Naruto actually jump in front of the snake, but you notice that Naruto's eyes have begun to turn red. And Sakura notices this, and that's when mentally it clicks for her. She's like, he's the host of the Nine Tails. It's beginning to make sense. And so Sakura, just ignores things for a time being, even though she's figured this fact out. It's just like, we have to focus on Orochimaru. However, Orochimaru is not going to have much difficulty with them. Even though Naruto's insanely powerful, and he can use increase and stuff, there's just not much they can do. Orochimaru just overpowers all three of them. He's a legendary Sannin. And so they end up getting boxed up. Orochimaru puts the curse mark on Sasuke. And Naruto ends up being barely conscious, but able to continue to use his Spirit Spear, where he carries him and his teammates to a tree with a little hole in the bottom to let them rest. And that's when Naruto kind of pulls some sort of Zoro moment, where he stands in front of the tree with his arms crossed, bleeding all over his body, just waiting, guarding his teammates. And that's when the sound team starts to pull up. And Naruto ends up calling his spear. And even though he's struggling to stay conscious, he knows that his teammates have nobody to defend them. And that's when he actually ends up unlocking Spirit Spear Form 6, Yggdra Cloth. And what it does is it actually puts an entire full suit of armor onto Naruto for him to have resistance to attacks, and he ends up killing them, unfortunately, because he doesn't have much of a choice. And if he doesn't kill them, he understands that he will die. And if he dies, there's no one left to protect his teammates. So he ends up actually killing the entire sound team in this timeline. The armor begins to crack during the fight, but it is such a strong armor that they don't actually manage to end up piercing it. And unfortunately, Naruto's just kind of too strong, where he ends up no-diffing them, truth be told. A half-asleep, severely injured Naruto ends up no-diffing the sound team. And that's when the other of the Konoha 12 arrive to notice what Naruto has done. And they're like, "Are you okay?" And Naruto, he knows they won't kill him. Worst case scenario, they'll just take his scroll and leave. He just kind of passes out. And ironically, that's when Sakura ends up actually waking up. It's just like, what happened? and she notices that Naruto is just kind of passed out on his flying pillow. I have to retcon something. It wasn't Form 2 Guardian. It was actually just default form pillow. That was my bad. That's a little retcon. Continuing. So the other teams actually just end up leaving them alone. And Sakura ends up trying her best to take Sasuke and Naruto with her. They end up eventually making it to the tower because they did end up with the other scroll from the sound team. They passed the forced of death part of the exam. And that's when they have the beginning of the one-on-ones. This happens several days later because how many people were severely injured and the fact that Orochimaru had been spotted. And they knew that was not a good situation. Sasuke's curse mark was sealed, and all that remains the same. And so, we continue on to the beginning of the 1v1 battles, before we continue on to the 1v1 battles, I would like to reiterate the sound team is dead, so the 1v1s are going to be slightly different. Anyways, the first battle is Sasuke versus Yoroi. And Sasuke is having a lot of trouble at first until eventually Yoroi ends up missing where he originally intended and ends up hitting Sasuke's curse mark, which begins to absorb some of the chakra from it and ends up knocking out Yoroi. That's about it. Sasuke did not get disqualified because it wasn't his fault. Then we have Shino versus Choji. I don't think it'd be that interesting of a fight. I do think Shino would just defeat Choji relatively easily. Then we have Kankuro versus Misumi. Kankuro wins. Sakura versus Ino. Sakura ends up placing a weak-ish seal, but strong enough to keep Ino out of her head on herself. So Ino has a lot more trouble, and Sakura does win. Not by a lot, but does win. Then we have Temari versus Tenten. Tenten's worst possible matchup. Temari does defeat her. Shikamaru doesn't end up having anybody to go against, so they end up just putting him through because the uneven number of people. And then we have Naruto Uzumaki versus the one, the only Kiba Inuzuka. Alright. I don't think you actually need me to go over this fight. We know Naruto bodies this motherfucker. Alright. This is not a question. Then we have Hinata versus Neji, which remains canonical, as well as Gaara versus Rock Lee. And the last fight doesn't happen because, the sound team is dead. And so, anyways, we then move on to, after the fights, Naruto yelling at Neji about what he had done to Hinata. And Hinata actually apologizes to Naruto for losing. And Naruto's like, it's not your place to apologize. You did fine. You did great. I'll tell you one thing. I will hit the brakes off that man to avenge you, Hinata. That's some, LW, game there, but we'll see. So, anyways, Naruto then, is just really angry. He walks out. Sasuke doesn't get to follow him because Kakashi takes him away to seal his curse mark once again. And Naruto and Sakura end up talking, and Sakura understands why Naruto is angry. But she explains to Naruto that the only way he's going to beat Neji is if he works hard and trains. But after all these fights, they were both really tired and they kind of just wanted to relax. So they end up going to the hot springs. Sakura's gone into the women's side, Naruto's gone into the guy's side. And that's when he looks over and he notices a pervy old man looking over the thing. And that's when he actually jumps up and punches him. It's like, stop peeping on those women, you pervert. So that's when all the women hear it, and they all quickly get out of the bath and just go get dressed and leave. And that's when Jiraiya's like, how dare you, you kid? And then that's when he looks at Naruto, he's like, oh. And he understands that Naruto is obviously his godson. And so Jiraiya actually looking at Naruto, instead of, making Naruto do all that shit he did in canon, he actually offers to teach Naruto, train him. And Naruto's like, why would I want to be trained by a pervert like you? And that's when Jiraiya introduces himself as the Toad Sage of Mount Myoboku. That's when Naruto's like, you expect me to believe that you're a Sannin? And Jiraiya's like, come on, you can sense how strong I am. I'm one of the strongest in this village. You can sense it. Don't act like you can't. And Naruto's like, fine, you're kind of right, but still, why were you peeping on those women? And that's when Jiraiya's like, research. And that's when Naruto's just kind of like, I don't even want to know more. But Naruto thinks about it. He's just like, one of the legendary Sannin training me? That's an opportunity. That's like a once in a lifetime opportunity. And so Naruto takes Jiraiya up on the offer. Now, Jiraiya this timeline doesn't feel the need to force Naruto to get the Nine Tails chakra because he can already see how strong Naruto actually is. But that's when he notices that he can sense Naruto's strength, but there's something wrong with this chakra. It's like, it's even worse than it was when Kushina had the Nine Tails. And that's when Jiraiya looks at Naruto. He's like, Naruto, could I see your stomach for a moment? And Naruto's like, why? He's like, I just want to look at that seal. And that's when he notices that there's another seal, a seal that doesn't belong there. And that's when he realizes this is Orochimaru's handiwork. And that's when he looks at Naruto. He's like, have you encountered Orochimaru? And Naruto, he admits that he has. And he got completely destroyed in the fight. And Jiraiya's like, you're lucky to be alive. And that's when Jiraiya is just like, so anyways, and then you just see him immediately shove his 5 fingers into Naruto's stomach to undo the seal, and Naruto's just completely winded. Like, it takes him out, basically. Naruto drops to his knees, unable to breathe for a few seconds. Jiraiya's then like, I'm sorry, Orochimaru had placed another seal on you. I'm shocked that you survived. And Naruto's like, I know he did. And that's when Naruto is just kind of like, if it hurt this much when he took it off, how did I even remain conscious during the Forest of Death? Because Naruto's even kind of shocked thinking back, because he knew what kind of pain he was in the Forest of Death. Yeah, he remained conscious and protected his team. And so Naruto ends up explaining everything that happened to Jiraiya, and Jiraiya's kind of just shocked. And that's when he realizes that the power coming off the spear has nothing to do with chakra. It's a whole different kind of power. Fascinating. He's fascinated. But that's when he's like, Naruto, would you like to learn a jutsu? And that's when Naruto's like, yeah, of course. And so Jiraiya tells Naruto, alright, this is what we call the summoning jutsu. He bites his finger, does the blood, does the hand signs, and summons a toad. And Naruto, before Jiraiya can even have him sign a contract or anything, tries it. And then there's just like greenish, I think there's some black on it, type of wolf thing with no eyes. And Naruto's like, what the hell is that? And even Jiraiya's shocked. He's like, I don't know. And that's when it barks at Naruto. And there's some sort of like instinctual link between the two. And Naruto begins to understand that this is going to be his summon. Like, he's like, I don't need to sign a thing with the toads. This is my summon. And so, anyways, Naruto decides for the next, month, since he's confident in his strength, that he wants to practice his summoning jutsu and learn everything he can about his summon, who he named Oslo, because it didn't previously have a name. And that's when he remembers Sakura mentioning that she wanted to learn something about seals, and Naruto looks at Jiraiya, he's like, Pervy Sage, I have a friend who wants to learn more about seals. Would you be willing to teach them? And that's when Jiraiya's like, hell no. And that's when Naruto's like, well, then I might have to tell everybody that you were perving on this friend who is 13 years old while she was in the bath. And Jiraiya's like, all right, I'll do it. I wasn't perving on her, but I get your point. And so Naruto actually ends up finding Sakura later that day. And it's just like, do you remember when you told me that you wanted to learn more about seals? Well, I found someone who would be able to train you on such things. And Sakura's like, really? And that's when he introduces Sakura to Jiraiya. And he's like, he is supposed to be my master for this month. However, I have another thing I have to do. So I asked him if he would train you. And she's like, you got one of the legendary Sannin to train me? Thank you, Naruto! And so, for the next month, Naruto figures out how his summon works, and Sakura practices her seals. And that's when we approach the date of the final exams. But, I don't really want to cover that in this part, I gotta leave you on a cliffhanger, There ain't nothing y'all can do about it. This is where I'm leaving it off for this part. And I'm hoping the next part will be the final part. And then I'm dropping the movie. Anyways, thank you for all you who stayed through the entire video and watched it. Y'all are great. I'll see you all next time. Peace.